Well, Jesse, there's only one thing I have to ask you. Are you ready for rapid fire?
I am ready for rapid fire, and I love that the little rapid fire subtitle just shot onto my screen, baby.
Boom. We need to put some flame emojis next to the rapid fire. I think that would. That's right. Well, rapid fire is predominantly about spring football practice today. Notre Dame spring practice just a couple of weeks away, and there were some press conferences over at Notre Dame today. Got a lot of information with Notre Dame football's director of sports performance, John Waggle, as well as football athletic trainer Rob Hunt. New general manager Mike Martin spoke at the media as well. But we're going to start with the spring news because we got the full spring schedule yesterday. Now, we're not allowed to go into full details on this, but first practice, Wednesday, March 19th. It's going to run, of course, through Saturday, April 12th with the Blue Gold game at Notre Dame Stadium. Not a lot of media availability that we're going to get in terms of practices to watch. We're only going to get 2 of the 4-period viewing windows, 1 full practice late in the spring, and then the Blue Gold game. So 2 partial viewing practices, 1 full practice, and the Blue Gold game. That's it. So 4 opportunities in total. Jesse, question.
I get it during fall camp and regular season, but it's spring practice. Everyone knows what your base and defense and offense are. Like,
I'm a little surprised as well.
Like, what are we hiding here? You know, and it seems like this spring is going to be even less kind of, I don't know what the best word to use here is, but I mean, they just came off the national championship. So it's not going to be an overly extensive spring by any means. And so,
right. And we're going to get into the details of that, like what we're actually going to get to see. It is a little weird, I think.
I don't know if it's because you got a new defensive coordinator or if because of you're going to be deciding evaluating quarterbacks. Maybe that has something to do with it. But I don't know. For a team that's, coming off the national championship run, again, spring is very simple. I just thought that there would be more media availability than that.
Yeah, exactly. I thought that there might be at least one more, longer period in there, but that's what, because the other side of this, and I've said this before, when you limit the availability to the media, there's only so much that we get to base our opinions on. And Vince and I were talking about this either earlier this week or last week. What's going to happen when you get these short, partial practices? There are other, because this has happened before when we've had quarterback competitions and that kind of thing going on. There are other people on the beat who are going to watch these short windows and watch these quarterbacks basically go through warm-ups, go through some routes to routes to wide receivers on air, maybe some one-on-one stuff. Yeah. And then, they're going to make these definitive statements about who looks better, who looks worse, and who should be ahead in this derby. And, so that's what's going to happen when we're not able to see any other live reps beyond that. Other people are going to make definitive statements about that. They are going to, in many cases, be misleading. And then also what's going to happen is we're going to have to answer to other people's opinions based on, the minutia that they're seeing or not seeing, or that they think they're seeing or not seeing. And it's going to lead to, and then what's going to happen is that's going to be the lingering opinion that gets put out there that's going to carry over for the next 4 months until fall training camp begins, because we're not going to get to see as much. I mean, that's the downside of it. Now, whether that matters or not to Marcus Freeman and the football program, I mean, based on the schedule that we've got, apparently not, but that's what's going to happen.
So basically what you're saying is it's going to create problems that don't need to be problems.
Yes. At least for us. Now, John Waggle also said today they have not determined the exact number of practices that they're going to have.
Which is crazy to me.
Between 10 and 15 practices is what they says. It's kind of a byproduct of, again, we're going to get into some of the player availabilities in this in a little bit, but it's a byproduct of what he says is the unique and wonderful situation of reaching the national championship game. So they might just, get to a certain point and say, we're not going to have any more practices, or we're just going to have, a light workout, that kind of thing. Quality over quantity, I guess. I don't know. What do you think of this?
I think we're obviously approaching kind of a new realm in terms of the expanded college football playoff. So it is going to have an impact on spring games. And we've seen some spring games already canceled. I don't think Notre Dame needs to go that route. I think it needs to be kind of responsive to where your team is at in the spring. Did you make a long run in the season? Do you have lingering issues? Do you have a lot of young guys? Do you maybe have more older guys? So I would say it's more about quality than quantity. At the end of the day, you want your guys to learn. You don't want to just be out there to be out there. And so if you can teach the young guys, get the experienced guys healthy, or maybe some of the guys that have some lingering issues healthy, work on the strength and conditioning, stay in peak performance, that kind of stuff. Definitely. But I think, and we'll talk about this here a little bit more too. I don't necessarily love the idea of certain guys have to practice, or not everyone's practicing the same amount of days, essentially. And I think that's where it can maybe get a little bit dicey, because you're kind of creating a natural hierarchy of, well, is this guy too good enough that he doesn't have to practice? Or, what's the situation here? This guy's practicing 15 times in camp, and this guy's only practicing maybe 7 or 8 times.
Well, and again, like we're talking about the abbreviated schedule and all that, and Werewolf says, I bet it's because there will be a lot of players taking days off, and Notre Dame doesn't need the media blowing something out of proportion. I don't know about that. But I mean, again, we're going to get into specific guys who are going to have partial schedules, and the guys who are going to be out for the entire spring here in just a moment. So, I mean, we're all going to go in with the understanding that not everyone's going to be out there every day, so like that's already a given. And we have that list of who is going to be out there, who's not going to be out there, and who's going to be partial. So I don't think that we would show up saying, well, this guy's not out there today, so jump to this conclusion. I mean, this spring is definitely going to be much more about the younger guys,
Exactly.
if nothing else. It seems like it's always about development, but it's going to be even more so about the younger guys this spring, it seems like.
And, Brian NY, last comment he made in the chat, new defensive coordinator needs reps. Like, I don't know. I still find that important, because even if you're not practicing, you have to find ways to communicate, build trust with one another, build comfortability within one another. And so, like, for that reason, it's like I would want, like, the whole defense, especially maybe like Drake Bowen, etc., to get comfortable with their new defensive coordinator and be out there at spring practice. So just my thoughts.
Like last spring, they worked on, I believe it was the dime package that they worked on a lot, like a lot of that kind of stuff, different sub packages and that kind of thing. But that was with a defensive coordinator who'd been around for 3 years. Now you've got a first-year defensive coordinator coming in. And so there's going to be a lot of, he doesn't have the familiarity with those guys like you're talking about. I mean, and it's a good point, Mike. He says nobody knows how to handle these practices. Nobody's played 16 games before. So it's all, I mean, that's
basically it.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what it is. And they're playing to the safe side of things. And I don't blame them for that, because you essentially played an NFL regular season schedule. And like Mike says, nobody's ever done that before. Decaf says, what are the chances they eventually cancel the blue gold game? I mean, I don't even think it's the blue gold game, that's the issue. It's just when you go this deep into the playoffs, you've just got more wear and tear on these bodies that they haven't,
And they played for a national championship not even 2 months ago.
Right. Exactly.
And it's crazy to think about that they have to go, like, how do you go from the ultimate high of a national championship to the grind of spring practice? Like, it's hard to think about. And again, I think it shows that football is year round. It's not just the season and the games and the playoff. It's a year round 20, every day of the week obligation.
By the way, Decaf also says I've got the Olivia Miles look going. I don't know about that, but definitely Definitely black. So let's talk about a couple specific players. Notre Dame athletic trainer Rob Hunt says quarterback CJ Carr is going to be a full participant in spring practices after dealing with an elbow injury for much of last fall. He is completely recovered now, according to Hunt today. Scale of 1 to 10. How important is Carr's presence this spring?
I mean, it's got to be a 10 out of 10 when you're the kind of the young gun fighting for the spot. And, depending on who you ask, a lot of people think is the guy who's going to end up being the starting quarterback. I think it's incredibly important for him to be there. And I think, some of the stuff that we saw last season with Riley Leonard and his limited availability in the spring and, kind of into the fall as well, probably came back to hurt him or bite him to a degree. So in terms of, being there, it's highly important. And then also when you're a quarterback, it's, about leadership. And so you have to establish yourself as a leader on the team as well. And I think the number one way to be a leader is to be in the trenches with everyone every day at practice, working out, whatever it might be.
I mean, I think some of the most important reps, no matter what's going on with who's at the other positions, are these quarterbacks, because you didn't bring in a veteran, and now it is either going to be Steve Angeli, CJ Carr, or Kenny Minchey in, whatever order that you want to put them in. So, I mean, I completely agree with what you're saying. It's a 10 out of 10. And like there are very few wide receivers who are going to be limited based on the list that we've got. And again, we'll go through that here in a moment. So this is, I mean, there's a quarterback competition going on. So no matter what, for CJ Carr to get out there on the field and be next to Steve Angeli and next to Kenny Minchey, and for all of them to be able to take their reps, it's hugely important. And obviously the fact that we were still getting questions, even though CJ Carr was going through warmups in the national championship game, in the Orange Bowl, and the Sugar, like he was out there with the team in full uniform and doing the same warmups that everybody else was after he had the elbow in the season. And we kept getting questions about, well, just how healthy is he? Is he going to be ready to go? So, I mean, that is the absolute most important thing, is that the elbow is healthy. They worked through it late in the season, and he's ready to go now. So vastly, vastly important for him to be able to be out there and to compete for the starting job. And again, like based on what this spring schedule is going to look like, I think it's pretty safe to say that there's not going to be any declarations made by the end of spring. This is something that is likely going to trickle into fall training camp as well. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Hunt says there was never any thought of Jeremiyah Love needing surgery on his knee, which limited him during Notre Dame's playoff run.
It's highly relieving that a knee surgery was never in the consideration. And I think it's a lot of reassurance moving forward into next season. It sounds like he just kind of twisted up and, needed basically time to heal it and not necessarily a surgery. But I think all Notre Dame fans were kind of holding their breath and really didn't know the extent of the injury. And was he just playing through it? How much was he playing through it? That sort of thing. But to me, it's just so relieving to know that there was no actual structural or like ligament damage done. He just needed some time off to heal. And again, it gives me that reassurance that next season he's going to be back and even better, and potentially, lead this team back into the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. It is also counter to some of the initial reports that you might remember. Speaking of
that's
us,
so funny.
Yes,
how that
us
came
having
full circle.
Yes, exactly right. You might remember there were reports about, this is going on, that is going on. It's going to mean this, and there was talk about whether or not he was going to miss the Indiana game because of all these different things. So again, coming back to us having to answer for other people's reports and everything else, like sometimes you just got to tamp the brakes, and you can't believe everything that you hear. Sometimes it takes a while, and I know that makes people nervous, but I mean, obviously for Jeremiyah Love's future and for the team, he tweaked the knee. There was an injury to some extent. It obviously impacted him. He had to wear the brace, but that's to be expected when you try to work through things and your team is playing in consequential football games. So thankfully there is no more extensive damage, and after some rest, Jeremiyah Love is going to be good to go. Looking forward to seeing him back out there on the field, full strength next spring. Okay, or next fall, I mean. So these are the players for Notre Dame who are going to be out this spring. Jordan Botelho with the knee, expected. Ashton Craig with the knee. Davian Dixon with a pec. Cooper Flanagan with an Achilles. Kahanu Kia with the knee. Chris Tarrick, foot and shoulder. Boubacar Traore with the knee. Chance Tucker with the knee. And Virginia Tech safety transfer Jalen Stroman had surgery for a clavicle. He's going to be limited for spring practice. But again, like when you're talking about the spring, I don't know how much benefit there is to, trying to get a guy back out there in spring practice when you're already being pretty precautionary with a lot of things. So do you view any one of these injuries as more significant than the others, I guess, just for the spring itself?
Yeah, I think that there's a clear and obvious answer for this, and I think that there is one that's most significant, and that person or that player would be Boubacar Traore. And the reason I say Boubacar Traore is because of his youthfulness, how quickly he came onto the scene, and then also I just feel like defensive line has the biggest kind of question mark around it when you're looking at the totality of the defense. And so you put all that together, or you combine all of that, his young talent, the need for standout defensive linemen now that some guys have kind of moved on. I think it's definitely, Boubacar Traore. And you could make the case for Jordan Botelho, but what Jordan Botelho is.
Yeah.
He's been here for a while. He just needs to get back and be healthy. But when you think about how young and talented Boubacar is and how many, not holes there are on the defensive line, but they just need to build back up that depth.
Yeah, that's kind of the direction that I was leaning in, is just what you were saying. At least with Traore and Botelho, they were emerging, and you knew, especially with Botelho, because like you said, he's been around for as long as he has. Traore hasn't been around as long, but they were both showing themselves like they were fully capable type guys. So at least that's there. Stroman, I lean a little bit, even though I guess, they did say he'd be able to kind of run around and, and at least kind of go through, non-contact type stuff, but at least be able to, go through some on-field type stuff in a non-contact type situation. But I do think that any chance that you can get to have a guy who transfers in to go through the system with his new team and all that kind of stuff, you'd like to have him out there. So I think he would be my other one. Like, perfect world, you'd be able to have him out there. Anthonie Knapp had surgery on his right ankle a couple days after the Orange Bowl, and he's more or less going to be day-to-day for the spring. Billy Schrauth is going to have cleanup procedure on his left ankle. He could be back by the end of the spring. So pretty much no Knapp or Schrauth or Ashton Craig, for that matter, this spring.
I don't want to say good, but let the young guys go to work.
Yeah, I mean, so what do you think it means for the future? Is it just, the offensive line specifically, is it just a chance again to get these young guys out there and get them as many reps as possible and see what they can do?
I do, and I think it's going to be largely beneficial because of some of the stuff that we saw last season. You never know. I think it's great to build up depth, and I think right now amongst the offensive line, all of the best talent is young. It's the freshmen and sophomores, and so I think that they need a lot of time to develop. And then you get to a point at the beginning of next season and fall camp, and that it's a good situation to be in when you have to piece together some of those veteran offensive linemen and those young and talented offensive linemen, and what that combination might look like. But I think it's great to give these young guys an opportunity so you can truly evaluate where they are and kind of come up with that cocktail of what the best offensive line will be for next season.
Yes, and it makes red jerseys, I think, even more important for quarterbacks to have on. They will be in red. How many other guys will be in red jerseys as a result of the fact you're going to have so many young offensive linemen out there? One thing to kind of keep an eye on, though, with all these young guys getting chances, like Joe Rudolph has a history of, like guys sort of emerging out of nowhere. So I think someone's going to kind of stand out this spring.
Gerby Lambert.
Hey, I mean, it's a chance for Gerby Lambert. It's a chance, like, again, like Charles Jagasaw has already shown himself, but like he's, like there's just going to be so many more guys with reps out there. So yeah, I think it's going to be good for those young guys, but I will be kind of curious to see who of that group kind of emerges and maybe makes a name for himself, and does he all of a sudden become an option going into fall training camp in July and August and whenever, camp happens to begin. It started in July the last couple of years. Brian, going back to the quarterbacks, no declarations, but does Carr pass Angeli on the depth chart this spring?
I think so.
I mean, I think most of us are leaning in that direction.
I think people just bring this up so it can start a little controversy.
I mean,
the chat gets fired up. DK
pretty sure the coaches in their mind know what the depth chart is, like what that actually looks like, and again, like how they split up the reps this spring. I mean, you're already going to be divvying reps to more guys anyway, so maybe that makes it even easier when you're splitting up reps with the quarterbacks.
I think they're going to give them all equal.
You think they will?
I don't think they want that burden of having to answer those questions, because everyone's watching everything. And I don't think that they want to put
pressure. Are they watching everything? People. Again, we don't have that much.
Right. And so like that's what I was saying is because they have like this spring is most important to the three quarterbacks fighting for the starting quarterback position. And so I would say the biggest advantage for Notre Dame not allowing the media is they simply just don't want the questions every day of who's ahead. Is Carr doing better today? Is Minchie doing better today? Because everyone wants them to name a starter in the spring, but it's never going to happen. Well, and they're going to overanalyze every rep that was taken in the spring by the quarterbacks.
And the other thing that I didn't mention is, even though the practice availability that we're going to have is going to be fairly limited, we are still going to have all the interviews with the assistant coaches and players and stuff like that. And they're going to, like, if the schedule, I'm not going to say what specific day, but if the schedule stays the way that they sent it out, Gino Guidugli and the quarterbacks are going to talk pretty early in spring, so they don't have to answer to those things late in the spring.
It's by design.
So I think, no, exactly. That's my point. They're going to do it early. They can talk about sort of what they need to accomplish in the spring and how they see themselves, and Gino can talk about it and all that kind of stuff, but they're not going to have to answer to how things are going late in the spring. So yeah, it's definitely by design. So Notre Dame also has individualized plans this spring for several players who had big workloads during the playoffs. Josh Burnham, Bryce Young, Drake Bowen, Jalen Sneed, Leonard Moore, Christian Gray, Adon Schuler, Jeremiyah Love, Emil Wagner, and Jaden Greathouse all fall into that category. So what do you make of this?
I make of this that these are, for lack of better terms, these are our studs, like these are our
they're all guys. Starters.
And they played
Emil Wagner played more snaps than anybody last year.
Right, and they played a ton of reps. They played more games than anyone else has ever played in a college football season. And there's no reason to risk losing them in something like spring practice. And so, if you feel like, and the thing is too, is just because they're not physically practicing doesn't mean that they still don't have the opportunity to mentor and teach, which is almost just as powerful as practicing itself, right? Because if you have the knowledge to teach or mentor, that means you have a full understanding of what's going on. And so I think that's going to be a big role for a lot of these guys this spring, is even though they're not practicing, they'll still be there. and they'll basically be like a teacher's assistant to the coach or the position coach, right? So there's still lots to be gained, and just because they're not physically practicing doesn't mean that they're necessarily losing out on anything. But I would rather give them more recovery time and have them more explosive, stronger, faster in the fall than wasting reps in the spring. It's like driving around in a car for no reason. You're just wasting miles and tread on your tires when you could, coming off a long season, of course, right? Like that's the backbone of this whole situation. No one has ever played as many games as Notre Dame has played in a college football season before. And so how you
except for Ohio State. Except
Ohio State. And so how you navigate that is a new kind of realm in college football. And so I don't mind being on the precautionary side and letting someone like Jeremiyah Love let that knee fully recover.
Yeah, I mean, these are all starters, obviously. And all this is going to do is, because again, spring is more experimental anyway, and you always use spring to at least some extent to give younger guys more looks, and all this does is add to that. Like, what more do you need to see from Leonard Moore and Christian Gray in the spring specifically? What you need to see from them is what happens in training camp, because obviously they're still going to be around going through summer workouts and all that kind of stuff. But like, you need to see, like, this gives them a great opportunity to find out about what they have in terms of depth. Now, again, Chance Tucker is on that list of guys who aren't going to be able to play, which is unfortunate for him, because that would give him, an opportunity, to get more reps. But in all these different cases, all it's going to do is give them more of an opportunity to see what they've got behind these guys and give them all very valuable reps. Josh is saying 9 injuries heading into spring camp, but Tyler, as he says, only 2 were from last season, though, and that's exactly right. Like, these are all, predominantly guys who were injured last season and still haven't fully recovered from some of those, and some of them were obviously injured during the college football playoff push and need an opportunity to recover as well. So, nothing I don't think, to get, too worked up about based on where they are right now. So, new Notre Dame general manager talked today as well, and here's something he had to say.
And here to tell me the significance of March 17th, St. Patty's Day, on the football programs, on our recruiting program. Like, what's the significance of that day? Pot of Gold Day. So Pot of Gold Day obviously is where we extend offers to the class of 2027. And I just, I think that's a really cool thing, right? I think a lot of places they have their, they send offers all throughout the year. I think Pot of Gold Day is a unique experience. So we made an experience out of the whole thing. And I just want to point out that this place was the first place to do that. And I think it's the best place to do it. And I want y'all to remember that March 17th, St. Patty's Day, belongs to the Irish. All right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
I mean, literally, it belongs to the Irish, Jess.
Yeah, I love that. And to me, it's a awesome tradition, or it's a fun tradition, or it's like this new tradition that's naturally come about, and it just kind of all makes sense and falls into place with where, some of these signings are at, and St. Patrick's Day and Pot of Gold. I just think it is so advantageous for Notre Dame to play on it as much as possible, because, for maybe people in the chat or listening later on, to them it's just like, who cares, but like, the kids love this stuff. The more you can do to interact and make it feel personal, and that they're in on this unique one-of-one experience that they can't get anywhere else and no other school can offer, it just naturally brings them back to Notre Dame more and more of like, that's the place I want to be, like, look at what they're doing that is so unique or different than what everyone else is doing. And so I love that the new GM did his homework. He came in and he said, you know what, like, we're keeping that, because St. Patrick's Day is for the Irish.
Trojans don't have their own holiday on the calendar, right?
Right.
I mean, you're absolutely right. Like, who else has something like this that is so unique? Nobody. The answer is nobody. And so it's, like, of course you're going to keep it going forward. So like you said, it's awesome that he recognizes that, and they're going to keep going forward with that as well.
I'd love to get a gold bar or something at the end of the day. Gold a token or something,
Mad that you're not going to get your own gold bar.
Yeah.
Fill in the blank. Notre Dame women's basketball begins ACC tournament play on Friday. It would be blank if they don't win the ACC tournament.
So I have to go with the word disappointment. And I got into a little bit of this on Tuesday during the women's basketball mailbag. And, they tied or had a share of the regular season ACC championship. And it largely came back down to the last week of action. And you can say that, Notre Dame kind of choked to a degree, right? And or maybe not even choked, just didn't play their best basketball really when they needed to finish off the regular season. And so if you double down on that and you also lose the ACC tournament, I find that to be a disappointment because this is a team that has national championship aspirations. You have 3 first-round draft picks on your roster. Really, you have 4. I mean, more than that. I mean,
right,
3 draft like this year.
Hidalgo's going to be once she finishes. Yeah,
right. Hidalgo's going to. So you really have 4 first-round players on your roster right now, and I just think that, and you could obviously make the argument that they have one of the best, guard courts in the entire country as well. And so you put all of that together in terms of expectations, where they were during the season, winning 19 in a row, just kind of falling short. And then if they continue to sputter and spin their wheels going into the big tournament, NCAA tournament, I just think they'd be a disappointment. I think they need to get hot and stay hot and ride this thing through the NCAA tournament. And I think that starts tomorrow against, I believe, Cal.
2 things. They need to get some momentum generated again. Like it started gradually against Louisville when they closed the regular season on Sunday, but they need to get that built back up again. So that is so important this weekend, the opportunity to have 3 games, 3 days, and the opportunity to close things out with a championship and go back into the NCAA tournament with some momentum on your side. If they don't win the tournament, obviously it's not the end of the world,
right?
But there's no chance that they can have a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. Like at this point, they're being projected as a number 2 seed, and just where they are in the rankings and everything, like they're going to be a 2 seed if they don't win the ACC tournament. That is their only ticket back into being a number 1 seed. So like that is the biggest thing is that opportunity to be a number 1 seed again. They won't be a number 1 seed if they don't win the NCAA tournament. So they need to get that momentum back and do that. As Decaf said, and as you just said, looks like they'll be playing Cal. They're actually in a commercial break right now. Cal, the last time I looked, was up on Virginia by like 25 points in the 3rd quarter. Josh, I don't know if you came in late, but we literally just a few minutes ago ran through the whole list of all the players that you were listing off in terms of, who's available, who's not, and all that kind of stuff. So we did go through that. Andre says, do you care about the number 1 seed or do you care about a championship? Well, they go hand in hand. There's a reason you want the best possible seed, because theoretically, like if you're the number 1 seed, you go through a number 4 seed as opposed to a 2 or 3 seed on the way to getting to the Final Four. I mean, obviously in theory, you have to beat everybody in front of you, but the number 1 seed theoretically sets you up for the better path to get to the Final Four and have a chance to win the national championship. I get what you're saying, but again, there's a reason they seed this thing out, and that's why, if at all possible, you want a number 1 seed.
So the thing is what got you? If Notre Dame gets a number 1 seed, what got you there? It's winning the ACC tournament. And like you said, it's gaining momentum and regaining that heat or hotness at the right time. And so the number 1 seed isn't do or die, but if they could get a number 1 seed, it would kind of feel like they've righted the ship back to center, basically.
Like they've kind of re-accomplished something.
Right. They've recalibrated and gotten back on track, and would give us more confidence in terms of this run that we all know that they're capable of in the NCAA tournament. And so not only that, but I think you also have to factor in a lot of what you were saying. There's a reason why you want to be the number one. You have the easiest path theoretically to the national championship, or to
Right.
at least clear your bracket, your side or your region of the bracket at the end of the day. So yes, it's not 100% detrimental, but the things that kind of go into why you got that one seed and then what could come off of it, I think is important.
No, exactly. And again, like I don't think that they've ever lacked for any confidence or anything like that. Just, they hit a speed bump over the course of a couple of games, and teams hit them with a specific mode of attack, and things worked in there. And like even this weekend, I feel like it's good. The two teams that beat Notre Dame in the conference are on the same side of the bracket together. So like in this instance, maybe it's not the worst thing. Like if they would have been the number one seed, they would have been on the side of the bracket with one of those two teams. They would have been on the side of the bracket with Florida State instead of NC State. But as it turns out, those two teams, NC State and Florida State, are on the same side of the bracket. I heard him talking on the ACC network today that Tanaya Latson, the Florida State player who's leading the nation in scoring and who was part of Florida State knocking off Notre Dame last week, like she's ticked off, I guess, that Hannah Hidalgo is the ACC's player of the year. Well, okay, I get that. But like as I apply that to Notre Dame, I think that if there's any silver lining to come out of where Notre Dame is and losing those two games, I think maybe it puts like more of a chip on their shoulders now and kind of gives them a little bit of extra, motivational oomph as they head into this postseason right now. As Neil Ivey was saying when we were getting ready to get on the plane yesterday, everybody's 0-0 right now. We're 0-0 right now. Reset, new season begins tomorrow. And as of right now, Cal is up by 20 on Virginia. So looking more and more like it's going to be the Cal Golden Bears. So Bill Simmons said on his podcast this week that it's a potentially dangerous thing for the Raiders to have Tom Brady involved in evaluating and picking the next quarterback for the franchise, because great players don't always make the best evaluators of talent. Simmons says, quote, "They think they're seeing things that other people don't see, and it's not actually rational," end quote. Do you buy or sell that, Jess?
I sell this, and I'm a big Bill Simmons fan. This might be one of his worst takes of all time, in my opinion. I just think it's complete hot garbage. We're talking about the greatest, most
Before you get into your
quarterback.
spiel, I disagree with you. So you continue, and then I'll come in with old man talk and see where we meet.
There's maybe a reason you and Bill are on the same page. No, I just think what this boils down to is Tom Brady was obviously, in my opinion, the greatest quarterback of all time. Whether or not Patrick Mahomes catches him, it's a completely different conversation right now. Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback. Not only is Tom Brady the greatest quarterback, but since retirement, he's still fully in football. He's still evaluating teams. He's still evaluating players. And you hear him often talk about kind of the mindset or the way that you went about, I guess you could say, training an NFL quarterback when he was in the league, and kind of where it's at now in terms of these guys get in the league and they're just kind of thrown to the wolves. Like, you're a starter instantly. You're expected to start instantly. When Tom Brady came into the league, you're going to sit down, you're going to learn, and you're going to have some time to develop, essentially, right? And so I guess what I'm getting at here is I just truly believe that no one knows more about the quarterback position than Tom Brady. And I know there is sometimes a gray line of,
but there can also be a different standard that might not be completely realistic because of the fact that you're Tom Brady or Joe Montana
And
or
I
Dan
think he
Marino or
understands
whoever it
that,
happens to
though,
be.
to a degree. I don't think he's holding everyone to the same expectations of what he is or used to be. But I think there's certain intangible things that you can say as a quarterback that's going to project well, or that's something that I can see is going to be lead to a lasting quarterback in the NFL. And so I don't know, just from a perspective of no one has played more snaps and had more success than Tom Brady at the quarterback level, I think he has he's in like the 95th percentile, maybe even 99th percentile of knowing what it takes to be a really successful quarterback.
But as Decaf says, and I agree with this, ask Michael Jordan how like all the things you just said
But I
about
don't
Tom
think
Brady also apply to Michael Jordan.
But the
And
thing
how did
about
things
Michael
go?
Jordan is he couldn't commit to it. He had other things. I don't think he was disciplined enough to stay away from extracurriculars in his life. Tom Brady wants to be in football.
But Tom Brady is already splitting his time between being a football owner and being a TV broadcaster. So he's got one foot in and one, he's got a foot in different arenas. And Michael Hunt brings up another one who is on my list, John Elway. Like John Elway didn't get it right in Colorado. Like I think that the Bo Nix is much more about Sean Payton than John Elway. Like the only quarterback that John Elway ever hit on was after Peyton Manning had neck surgery with the Colts, and John Elway said, well, let's, what do we got to lose? Let's bring him in. And Peyton obviously gets him to a couple of Super Bowls and help him win one. I just think, and I agree with what Bill Simmons is saying, and some of these guys he uses examples as well. I just think it's one thing to be a great player with great talent, but it's another thing to be a great talent evaluator, because again, great players just have a different gear and a different drive that 99% of everyone else just don't have. There are a reason these guys are in the Hall of Fame. It's a lot of it comes from the internal drive that they had to go along with the talent that they had as well. Wayne Gretzky, another example, arguably the greatest hockey player of all time, or at least one of the greatest hockey players of all time. Never made the playoffs as a coach when he coached in the NFL. Magic Johnson, obviously, great player. He tried to coach as well. Didn't work out for him. So I just think that, it doesn't mean that it can't work. And, and is worth saying that Bill Simmons obviously is a Patriots fan. So, he was a huge Tom Brady fan from his playing days. But look at rank and file who have been. Like Bill Belichick was not was not a great player in his time. By and large, when you look at the guys who have made the best head coaches and the best, general managers, front office type guys, none of them have been great players. So I agree with I'm buying what Simmons is saying. I like it is not a lock guarantee that what happened, maybe Brady proves him wrong and proves everybody else wrong who maybe don't believe in it. But I do think that there's something to what he's saying. Like the greatest players, look at Larry Bird. Like what did Larry Bird has coached. He's been an executive. He's had good teams, never had great teams before he finally hung it up. So I think there's something to it.
And I get that. And I understand what you're saying, but I think the way I'm kind of thinking about this is at the end of the day, if I had to pick Tom Brady or the other guy, I'm willing to roll the dice on Tom
more
Brady.
People are going to go with Tom Brady because he's Tom Brady. But he's going to have to prove this is a big decision coming up for the Raiders with just, with what exactly does happen. And obviously the Raiders have been down for a long time. They've got Tom Brady, and obviously they think that there's something to Tom Brady who can help kind of drag them out of what's been a couple decades long irrelevance. In the time that the Patriots have been down, Brady went out and won his 7 Super Bowls. So, all right, speaking of quarterbacks, the Vikings did not put the franchise tag on Sam Darnold, meaning that the quarterback is a free agent. If you're a team in need of a quarterback, do you want Darnold?
I'm hesitant, but I'm willing to give him a shot if I'm desperate. And the reason why I'm hesitant is because Kevin O'Connell, in my opinion, is a quarterback whisperer. He's got like a degree in quarterback freaking whispering because
Exactly.
my man has won games with Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold, Joshua Dobbs. Heck, he won a game with a quarterback with the name Jaron Hall. You probably couldn't even tell me who Jaron Hall is, but he found a way to win some games, right?
Josh
And
Dobbs went from irrelevant Arizona Cardinals backup to winning games for the Vikings when he was
exactly.
there.
And so, that's my issue with O'Connell on the flip side is I think he finds ways to win games, but he can't find ways to win the big games. Like he can get through the regular season and find ways to kind of, play chess with you and get past you. But when it comes to the playoffs and it's good on good, like that Vikings team that went, 14-2 or whatever that one year and then just got blown out in the first round. I think they got beat by the Giants.
Are you talking?
Well, two times that's happened then because they did it a couple of years ago when they.
That's right. When the Giants were in the playoffs. That's
exactly.
right.
The Giants
in
beat them.
Dable's first season. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so O'Connell is definitely a regular season quarterback whisperer, but I think that he ran into a wall of Sam Darnold wasn't good enough to get them over the hump come playoff time. And so you combine that all together, I don't think Sam Darnold's going to get you anywhere in the playoffs. I think he actually probably maxed out his ceiling because of Kevin O'Connell in the regular season. Unless I'm desperate, he's kind of a middle of the road average quarterback to me.
Yeah, and it sucks for Darnold because, he had, 80% of his 90% of his season. He was great. He's leading them to all these wins and into the playoffs and everything else. He had 2 bad weeks at the end of the season, and now everyone's willing to just write him off. And even the Vikings, obviously they had a business decision to make because of J.J. McCarthy, who got injured and gave Darnold the opportunity. But the problem I would have if I'm, the Raiders or the Giants, I think those are 2 prime options, in terms of where Darnold could go and start. If I'm either one of those teams, I know the Giants think that they're closer in terms of what they've got on their roster because they've got Neighbors and some other guys. And, it's like a couple of good offensive linemen. Michael Hahn is saying, nope. And Michael Hahn is our resident New York Giants fan here. He obviously got to see him with the New York Jets, but I agree. Like wherever he goes, he's not going to have Kevin O'Connell. And he's not going to have Justin Jefferson. And he's not going to have Jordan Addison. Those 3 factors were huge factors. And even who was in the backfield with him as well, they were and having Hawkinson. Like those were all factors in why Darnold was able to have the season that he had this year. So like he's going to command north of $20 million. That's still a lot of money, even though it's not franchise quarterback money that's going out in the $45-50 million range right now. That's still a huge amount of money to give a quarterback who's only had 1 good year and essentially, was Cinderella and had the slipper fall off at the end of the season. So it sucks for Sam Darnold, but I would have a hard time. But I think you said, the key word, how desperate are you? If you're Cleveland needs a quarterback right now. Would you want Darnold?
I think there's Joe Flacco, then they could win with Sam Darnold.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like that might make sense because Stefanski actually comes from that same tree. Like we've talked about it before. Stefanski is basically won with anybody not named Deshaun Watson. So maybe you do give it a shot. If you're Cleveland, if I'm the other teams, though, I would have to think long and hard about it.
Speaking of, though,
the Giants are desperate right now, though themselves. Like that front office is trying to save their jobs going into this offseason.
They've been desperate ever since they drafted Daniel Jones.
What were you going to say? I cut you off there.
Did you see Cleveland? I guess has paid off majority of Watson's contract already.
Oh, really? No, I hadn't seen that.
Yeah, they've gotten a lot of the fully guaranteed money off, and they restructured it, and they've basically freed up around $40 million.
Ooh.
because of this. And so, there's been rumors about Myles Garrett being traded. There's been rumors about, do you take Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders with the number 2 overall pick? So Cleveland's got a lot of decisions to make. And can we honestly say that like the Deshaun Watson experience was one of the biggest flops in terms of just what they paid and what they got and what he turned into? Like,
does he get a job again?
No,
I don't think so either.
It's just not worth the baggage that comes with it.
Yeah.
Even if he could be a backup.
Yeah. I think his time is.
So Jerry Jones will naturally ask him to be their backup.
Don't even go there. You made it all the way to the end. I think you said Cowboys twice. Well, I guess you didn't technically say Cowboys, but you referenced them twice. All right. A lot of great stuff today. As of right now, Cal is up by 21 points on Virginia in the fourth quarter. So looking like that's going to be Notre Dame's opponent Friday, 5 o'clock Eastern time at the ACC tournament in Greensboro. Andre, if you're still out there, I look forward to seeing you this weekend, assuming you are still coming to town to Greensboro. I know you said you were having a hard time finding tickets for Saturday. I don't know.
Just give him your.
Is that you or
pass.
me?
That's you. Just give him your media pass.
I might get in trouble if I do that. Might also not be able to get in. All right, Andre said he's still going to try. Have a great weekend. Jesse and Vince will be with you tomorrow for a rapid fire show. So looking forward to seeing what they've got coming up for you tomorrow. I will talk to you later. Hit the like button before you leave. Aviation Sports Talk.